Chinese leader Xi is reportedly demanding that U.S. President Trump oppose Taiwan's independence. This information is reported by the Wall Street Journal. It is said that Xi Jinping is pressuring Trump as part of negotiations over a trade deal between the two countries. Why does Xi want this, and will Trump agree to it? And most importantly, in exchange for what? Anna Brikova investigated the issue
to speak out against Taiwan's independence. According to the Wall Street Journal, Xi is currently putting pressure on Trump over this issue amid the ongoing twists and turns surrounding the much-troubled trade deal between China and the US, as the imposition of steep tariffs keeps getting postponed, but the agreement itself remains unresolved. And although this information comes from sources, it is a completely realistic Chinese track.
The diplomatic track is the most relevant for China, and of course, if they can publicly demonstrate that the United States is not opposed to reunification, it will be much easier for them to politically seize power in Taiwan.
So as not to start hostilities, although there are threats and preparations for such a scenario are being demonstrated. However, at the political level, the US still does not recognize Taiwan's independence, and it is precisely the establishment of diplomatic relations with China that excludes this possibility.
The United States supports the One China policy, and at the same time they are interested for now in maintaining the status quo, which has been established there over many years.
So the devil really may be hiding in the details.
The United States of America does not support Taiwan's independence. That is, this is the current formulation, the wording that exists, but it was replaced with the statement that the United States of America opposes Taiwan's independence. That is, these are formulations in diplomatic language which at the international level will signify changed approaches by the United States of America regarding Taiwan.
After all, for many decades, despite not recognizing Taiwan, the US has been its partner in the region, a geopolitically important one, as it is part of the effort to contain China specifically in the Asia-Pacific region. This is stipulated in the so-called Taiwan Act, or the US law on relations with Taiwan. Although even there, the One China policy is recognized.
The US has obligations to protect the island, to defend Taiwan in the event of a threat from, say, some third country. And this obligation, the United States has upheld for many years, and they have supplied weapons.
Although the clause on military assistance was eventually removed from the document, nevertheless, the US regularly provided arms packages to Taiwan during Donald Trump's term as well, but this time for money. So the current US president's approach to Taiwan has already changed somewhat, which worries Taipei. He also refused Washington's request to move part of his chip production to the US.
Here, there might be a more cautious policy from Trump, adherence to certain norms that were previously observed by the previous administration. But Trump, no, as in his first term, his first tenure, he broke various such restrictions that had previously been observed. Now again, for example, he has reduced diplomatic exchanges. He is also very cautious, for instance, about any visits by Taiwanese representatives.
In the summer, Washington even denied a transit visit to the president of Taiwan, who was traveling to another country, so as not to grant the island additional subjectivity and not to provoke China during negotiations, as China consistently emphasizes its claims over Taiwan.
We must deepen exchanges and cooperation between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait, resolutely oppose the separatist actions of Taiwan independence forces and the interference of external forces, and firmly defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
But on the island, there is resistance to this, although in the most recent presidential elections, the pro-China candidate already gained considerable support. This is linked in particular to Beijing's systematic efforts to exert political influence on the island. And now, if the US does change its approach to supporting Taiwan for the sake of a deal, pro-China forces may gain more opportunities.
Unfortunately, it could become a bargaining chip in any other deal between the PRC and the US, whether it's an economic, political, or security agreement.
There are even rumors that Trump might use such a trade-off to force Xi to influence Putin to stop the war against Ukraine. And such discussions are not out of the question, since both the US and China, in their pursuit of a trade agreement, may express various wishes.
All of this will be the result of extensive discussions. Of course, it's hard to even predict right now, let's say, whether Donald Trump will make certain concessions or not, because we're talking about the interests of the United States of America.
The trends may become clearer, most likely closer to the anticipated meeting between Trump and Xi at the summit in South Korea, where the leaders plan to continue discussing the agreement between the U.S. and China. Anna Brikova, We Ukraine, Marathon, United News.
Shutdown situation. The United States will lose $15 billion a week because members of Congress failed to agree on a new national budget, forcing the shutdown of government agencies. Before the weekend, the main national budget was not approved, so the work of ministries and agencies remains paralyzed. Dmytro Anopchenko found out in Washington whether this has affected negotiations with Ukraine and the supply of weapons.
Just like in a children's fairy tale, where at midnight the carriage turned into a pumpkin. At 12 o'clock a.m. on October 1st, U.S. government officials effectively lost the ability to work normally. Key ministries, including the Treasury, stopped working. The Pentagon sent 335,000 employees home. That's half of the entire civilian staff of the Department of Defense. Republicans and Democrats in Congress failed to reach an agreement on a number of expenditures. The country's budget stalled, a temporary one was not adopted, and now the corridors of power are almost empty. Democrats are also at home as of Wednesday without pay, and politicians are blaming each other for provoking the shutdown and dragging it out for political reasons.
Today we see Republicans playing the same games so they get the same results. And the question is whether they will change course.
And we know, and the Democrats know, they are not right. They have absolutely no reason to cause a shutdown. They're only doing this because of politics.
The official reason for everything happening now in the States is the disagreement over spending on healthcare and medical insurance for the underprivileged. But it's not hard to see the hidden part of the political iceberg. It's beneficial for the Democrats to highlight the inefficiency of Trump's team, as if to say this is what they've brought the country to.
Cruelty is the essence of all of Trump's and his administration's policies, and Americans know this. The vast majority of the country's residents have already come to the conclusion that America is moving in the wrong direction, and the price for this is too high.
But the Republicans were also prepared for such a turn of events. And they are using the shutdown for mass layoffs in the government apparatus, particularly targeting officials who remained in their positions from Biden's administration. From government agencies, Trump had already asked to prepare layoff plans for those who have so far only been sent on forced unpaid leave. And the president doesn't even try to hide it. He says so publicly. A government shutdown will allow them to purge the state apparatus of disloyal employees and reduce staff to the bare minimum necessary.
It's as clear as day. The Democrats are staging internal sabotage against the country and the American people themselves. And this madness has to end already.
But enough about internal squabbles. With the approach of the parliamentary elections in the States, they will only intensify. What matters more is how all this will affect Ukraine. And there are several threats. Negotiation processes, signing new agreements, and arms deliveries. The Pentagon and the NATO press service, as of now, have not responded to our requests or clarified officially how the shutdown has affected or might still affect the delivery of weapons to Ukraine that were paid for by the Europeans. Ukrainian diplomats assure that there are no delays since the previous package was approved before all these events. The Ukrainian technical negotiation mission, which arrived in Washington on the very day the shutdown began, and whose main task was precisely to hold talks with the U.S. Department of Defense regarding the drone agreement, thank you. They assure that they were able to hold their meetings. And now everything depends on how long the American shutdown will last. And the longest one, also under Trump, lasted for 35 days.
We have such chaos because the country is divided and polarized, because agreeing with opponents in the eyes of voters is seen as a sign of weakness. To make concessions is to play into the enemy's hands, so no one is willing to compromise.
Ukraine had planned to discuss 4 agreements in the next 2 to 3 weeks. These included security guarantees, drones, a free trade zone, and a major agreement on arms purchases worth nearly $90 billion. The plan was to reach an understanding by mid-October so that the Prime Minister's visit could take place in the 20s of the month and the documents could be signed. Top-level contacts are ongoing directly and everything is still happening now. But for the paperwork itself, you need officials, lower-level staff, bureaucrats, lawyers, those who work with documents, those who prepare analytics. And if employees of the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Commerce, the National Security Council, the State Department, and even partly the White House remain on forced leave for another week or two, Ukrainian issues may also be delayed. So for us, it's clearly not a catastrophe, but it may be necessary to adjust our plans. If, as is the case now, the American elites are preoccupied only with internal squabbles, and the shutdown significantly strengthens Trump's personal position.
The president takes little pleasure in this. He did not want a shutdown. I heard this from him. I was in the Oval Office. But in a situation where Congress hasn't approved the budget, now it's in the hands of our commander-in-chief. It's the president's responsibility to decide how to spend funds and resources, so he doesn't complain.
And it's unlikely that the top official will suddenly change his mind and want to take this opportunity to allocate some tranche. More likely, he'll try to cut government spending even further. Therefore, the plan to shift from Biden's military aid to Trump's military procurements turned out to be the right one. Contracts, especially with Europeans, will be fulfilled despite any political storms, whereas aid could have been halted by a situation like the one currently happening in the US. From Washington, Dmytro Anopchenko, Serhiy Koval, American Bureau of Inter-TV channel Marathon United News.